world's such an exciting place, isn't it? Welcome to the Redpill Diaries. I'm Craig, you're you, I'm pretty sure you are. But who I'm not sure about are the people who run our countries. Now, I didn't, of course, it's the second one I'm doing today, and the reason why I'm doing two is I wanted to split up the subjects. Rumble, I just gave you like so much food and you're such a greedy little shit. The older he gets, the greedier he gets. But enough about my dog. Although, oh, look how cute he is. Little edible. All right, back to me. Go away, come on. This is about New Zealand. And so yeah, good morning, New Zealand. Wake the fuck up, as I say to Kiwis all the time. Now, something that I may have mentioned in a video about 8 or 9 months ago, and I just don't know where it would have been if I did mention it. If I did mention it at all. Anyway, what it's about, and it's quite a serious topic, because today I learned some more stuff about New Zealand, so I was going to put it into a video, and I thought, let's not mix it with the last one about the coronavirus. Because this one does deserve a video on its own. Basically, a guy that we know in New Zealand, the husband of a very good friend of me and my brother's, and my mother's too. Oh, damn it. Fuck it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It can't be narrowed down. Yeah, fuck it. Basically, someone in the military is saying that they've got all these stickers, and it says COVID-19 on them. It's a yellow fluorescent thing. It's for the military. It's for a big warehouse. Basically, soon you're going to have buses or something. I think it might be to put for transport vehicles, or to put on buildings, maybe. Not really sure. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this today is because I'm almost certain that I mentioned this in the video last year when I got told this. Was that my little doggy Monkey, was that this guy in the military, an older gentleman, was explaining that even from the time of David Lange turning away the American nuclear vessels, saying, I can smell the uranium on your breath. Yes, I have mentioned this in one of those videos. So yeah, if you look back to, I think it was when I was in Bulgaria, you'll see it was mentioned in one of those videos. That's not that I expected to go back and check. It's old, outdated information. But anyway, what I can tell you is that in the Marlborough Sounds, up north, so as you're coming from where the ferry goes, well, not that exact route, there's all these sounds in New Zealand. So basically the sound is where the mountains just go straight into the sea. It's quite dramatic look. But basically the New Zealand Army was in there, and they have the subterranean entrance for this guy's old-timer and very senior in the New Zealand Army, right? Or New Zealand Navy, sorry. And they have a subterranean or subsea entrance. They blasted this whole mountain out, and it's not for New Zealand equipment, it's for American equipment. And anyone who was following the story with the GCSB years ago, where they were in New Zealand and the media went in there, and they didn't have passes first of all, and they got told they could come back and do a formal interview. The first time they went there, they used the zoom lenses, and one guy was sneaking around, and he was able to see there was things on walls that when they came back there for the official visit were all removed from the walls. They had files there that were from New Zealand citizens and people from all over the world. And then when they went back for the official visit, all the New Zealand citizen stuff being removed, obviously because the Privacy Act of 1993, which prevents them basically storing data about you or taking data. In New Zealand, the way it works, the Privacy Act is the data belongs to you. You always own it. So, for example, you can go down to a police station and say, what information do you have on me? Not many countries you can actually do that. And they have to show you what they have, because you know why? You own it. It's about you. Very good law. It makes you wonder how it ended up being in New Zealand, the country that's actually such a controlled country, and that is actually effectively a lapdog of America in many ways. especially when it comes to NASA, the NSA, and the U.S. military. So basically, what he was saying is that despite the narrative we had when David Lange was a really good prime minister back in the 1980s. I moved to New Zealand in 1987. He was a prime minister then, and it went around the world. Of course, the French came in there and they bombed the Rainbow Warrior. They were letting off nuclear weapons and testing nukes all around Mururoa Atoll at the time, and destroying the whole Pacific. That's when, again, why you've got to ask yourself, if military grade plutonium and military grade uranium is at such a higher quality level, and someone might explain this if you've got a better understanding of physics than I do, then how come you haven't got thousands of years of cleanup to wait for, like you do have to do in, let's say, Fukushima, which is still a disaster zone, and to many effect, Chernobyl, which my friend went to recently, actually, for a little bit of a tour. You can now walk around it. Well, so much for 20,000 years, you know. That's why a lot of people don't believe that nuclear weapons are real. They believe that what it is large fire bombs, which, you know, for all we know is the case that happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So New Zealand, back to that. What this, I can't remember his rank, but I know it's somewhere up a level of general. It's very high up, this guy is. He was saying that it's all for show. It's all part of a narrative. A clean green New Zealand. Let's take the focus off there. Oh well, New Zealand seemed to be quite hostile with America and France, of course, militarily, because the French terrorists that came and bombed the Rainbow Warrior was because of the nuclear agenda. So New Zealand, they made a big distraction, and from what it looks like, the whole thing was false. Kiwis died for that, you know. For this. No, actually, I don't know if anyone died on the Rainbow Warrior. I'll need to look that up. Actually, it's a long time. I was a kid when that happened, you know. But it was quite a big event in New Zealand at the time in Auckland Harbour. So what it looks like is the whole thing was probably staged to take away the attention of the American military presence in New Zealand. Remember, at the time, this is still the Cold War on. You've got satellites going around the world, and if you believe the flat earthers, that you've got satellites that are actually just balloons going around the world catching slipstreams. So there's certain parts of the world that they wouldn't have good satellite images of because the slipstreams aren't there. For example, 42 degrees below, if you look on the latitudinal lines, New Zealand sits at 42 degrees, right? So hence the vodka 42 below. Just interesting fact there. So what that would be, come on Rumble, not now. Just go out and make your own fun, right? I know. He's just been out for a massive walk. Yeah. So what he's ended up saying was basically the whole thing was for show, and the military have a massive presence in New Zealand, in the South Island. Makes a lot of sense as well if you look at the shows. If you do a quick search on Queenstown, rich American bolt holes, and you'll see a whole bunch of anywhere between $5 to $50 million homes. You get them in the North Island as well, but they're mostly in the South Island and are mostly outside the town of Queenstown. And this is why, if the whole world does fall to shit, and I have anything to do with it, let's say if I've got the power, control, or ability, or even just intelligence to pass on to people who can do, that's where we're going to go hunting our fuckheads, these elite assholes that have fucked the world for everyone else, just for their greed. That's where they'll all be hiding. They'll be hiding down there while everyone else is dying of skin infections and all sorts of stuff caused by the putrid slurry and everything that they've unleashed upon the world. There's definitely not going to be Australia. Sorry, Aussies. That's just the fact of it. Your country was not chosen as the safe haven. Although the Mad Max situation could happen, you know, a lot of these things are just basically. I really think that there's rules the Illuminati and the elite have to follow, and part of those rules, like many have mentioned in the past, who have been in their company, are that they have to play by those rules. And some of those rules are they have to give us hints. They basically have to dangle the truth in front of us and go, ha, 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 ha. No, we're just kidding. It's not really real. We're not really going to create a system like Elysium or a system like the Minority Report where they can do pre-crime, although they are doing it already. We're not really going to do something where we can predict what you're going to want before you want it because of, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, all the people that are allowed to be millionaires. This system was not by accident, you know what I mean? Another thing I wanted to mention, besides what's going on in New Zealand, so the hidden South Island, because look, I've got to believe the guy. Very senior, not a conspiracy theorist, just a senior military official who's telling us that they blasted out this mountain and it houses American nuclear submarines, okay? Not Russian, not American, but for all we know, they're all in cahoots, like I keep on saying, because I really do believe that. I believe all of our governments are a collective enemy against all of us. They use us all for cattle. They are the farmers. Sometimes farmers fall out. I should have probably mentioned the thing I was going to say because now I've forgotten it. there was another thing I was going to mention. So New Zealand's part of the Five Eyes. Now, years ago there was a project in 1970. I think it was 79, called the Echelon Project. Right. Now that was a global system that would record phone calls and fax transmissions back in the day for certain countries or possibly the whole world. And I used to work as a telecommunications specialist in the start of my career, right? I went from IT to telecoms back into IT again. And I used to think to myself back then, damn, how could we had systems that had petabytes of information, right? Some of these big server farms we had. And that back then, that was a big thing. You're talking rows and rows of all these hard drives and you didn't have the same kind of SAN technology. SANs were so expensive back then. You know, you could pay a couple of $100,000 for a SAN that only had a few terabytes. You know, it really was expensive back then. So you're talking a lot of data. And I thought to myself, damn, how can they afford this? Of course, we know how they could afford it. They had an open checkbook because they would steal off the American public, they would steal off the British public, all the taxes. But besides that, they can also print money at will. We don't know. Look, there's a thing they talk about, well, no, if too much money goes out there, then they know about it. No. They've got rules, but at the same time, they can also print anything they want, put a pallet of cash out there. They could even duplicate the same notes. Do you think someone's going to go scanning every note and say, hey, that number showed up again in a town 50 miles from here? No, you could have the same note printed 1,000 times. It probably is. That's probably how they do it. They probably paid in cash for a lot of these things. Off the books. But anyway, let's not get focused on that too much. I wondered how much storage it would take to do all even if we could use compression stuff. Some of the compression equipment I used to work on, like ECI, Muxes, Muldums and Muxes and things, they do compression down to about 10-1. 10-1 is about the highest compression you could get back in those days, where before you were using voice over IP, right? I know I'm getting a bit nerdy now, but stick with me. So we have things years ago, CC7 and SS7 signaling, right? So 10-1 compression. Now that would mean that every second that you're talking, instead of it being 56 kilobits a second in America or 64 kilobits in other countries like Japan or any other country that used a thing called E1s, which is a 2 megabit circuit with 30 voice channels or 31 voice channels, it meant that you're recording at that certain rate. Well, of course, 1/10 of that is 6.4 kilobits a second or 5.6, and if you're in Americanized countries, right, using T1 circuits. So what it meant is it still was a lot of data for those days, and you would have to have massive server farms and stuff and a hell of a lot of money to spend. Never mind, how are you gonna record calls in countries that you're not in? And that problem was solved by a thing called tromboning. People in telecoms will understand what I'm talking about. This is where you effectively send calls around the world. Now, how would you achieve that? You achieve that, I'm going to tell you right now, by having what's called least cost routing. So if I give something to, let's say I give a route towards Saudi Arabia, and I give that route on purpose for cheaper to Singapore Telecom, Singtel, than I do to British Telecom. So what will happen is I will sell it to Singtel, and Singtel will sell it back to British Telecom. So if I'm scanning all the traffic going through to Singtel, by default I'm getting all the traffic that's going through the British stream as well, and vice versa, right? So if you can make traffic have to hop enough times, and you do that by giving all different route prices, so that instead of being passing to one company, then it getting terminated, your phone call, and I know this when I looked at the signaling in a phone call, right, it tells me when it leaves one switch to another switch, what's called an adjacent point code, which is similar to what you have in IT routing, which is called an IP address, right? But adjacent point code has got 3 blocks of numbers, right? It could tell me it bounced between these 20, and I can look on these indexes and find out what country those 20 are in. Oh shit, it bounced off Iran, it went to Israel, went to here. And you will find that a lot of times back in those days, your call would go around the world 3 times, through different routes, of course, passing to each person. So let's say it was 30 pence a minute. All the calls are in American cents. That was the order of the day. So everyone's clipping the ticket on it. You paid 30p, but the first guy only paid 5 pence. The next guy made half a pence per minute on your call. You're of course passing millions of minutes, and you're scanning all of those. And because it might be passing through your switch, there'll be certain hubs where everyone's calls pass through. That is how Echelon was able to record all the calls. I don't say one particular center, but what I say is the 5 eyes: Canada, New Zealand, Australia, America, Britain. The 5 eyes between them would have data intersection points. They could record absolutely everything. The same thing obviously got upgraded in the internet age, and the same thing was so until they could use types of encryption that were beyond the government, remembering that America uses a level called DES level 10. DES level 3 was what was used in most bank machines around the world to encrypt their data, which means that America could look into the banking systems of the rest of the world, but the rest of the world couldn't look into their systems because that's how it works, right? And then you will see in the news recently that a Swiss company was actually a CIA company that was a fake Swiss company that was set up to give people free communication. Governments all around the world were using this. Our company, private, similar thing. We've got a 3-layer encryption, so but ours is point to point, and the encryption keys are destroyed. We don't actually have it in a synchronized server. But without the full code being open source, we could be lying to you as well, but we're not. But we could be lying to you. You see what I mean? And in the cases of these solutions, like the one from Switzerland, they were lying to you. American government had complete access to these systems, and they were looking into all government traffic. And that bleeds on to... Rumble, come on! That bleeds on to business, because obviously governments will sell this to the highest bidder. And that is how some companies get inside information, and it's basically industrial espionage, and can fuck up other countries, right? So New Zealand had a lot of involvement. I know I've gone a bit of a sidetrack there, a bit nerdy, but hopefully you stuck with me. We've come through the other side, and we're here still together, and we can carry on, right? I left New Zealand because it was the most socially engineered country in the world. My brother and I used to talk about it all the time. He unfortunately had to lose his child to the system because his complete bitch of an ex-wife was indoctrinated by the misandry systems of the world to basically be one of these women who abuse power. A lot of women, they can't handle power, right? It's by genetics, women aren't used to having power, so it's not coded in their mind not to abuse it. Of course, men abuse power too, but it tends to be narcissists who abuse power. With women, you'll find that women who are not full-blown narcissists, they're just vain or just egotistical. They will also abuse power a lot more readily than a mildly egotistical male will, right? Just something I've noticed in business. There's no point fucking arguing at me or calling me a misogynist. Everything I tell you is based upon what I've seen in my fairly extensive experience as a contractor around the world, working in different government organizations and different corporations, okay? If you don't like what I say, then you have to go out there and you need to go and change reality, all right? So I'm not going to apologize for the reality that I've witnessed. I call it for exactly how it is. So New Zealand is a very socially engineered country, which is why so many men have gone through the torture which men in America have gone through, where they lose their child and the system is basically in place to extract the wealth. Now, I heard this from a lawyer years ago, and another friend, actually a very close friend of mine, Dean, also told me. But I heard from this lawyer that the whole family court system in New Zealand was set up specifically to extract middle class to upper class wealth. So as soon as there's a problem with the child, you use the child as basically this, the woman will use the child as a weapon because she's been given the power. She's been empowered by our misandrist system. Misandry is the opposite of misogyny. New Zealand is the opposite of Saudi Arabia. Of course, they have a very different culture. You know, you could have a Saudi Arabia that was set up for women. You could have a New Zealand that was set up for men. So I'm not saying that it's the inverse of Saudi Arabia. What I'm saying is the opposite system. One has misandry, one has misogyny ingrained in its society, and neither is good. I cannot stand unfair playing fields. So, short story long, this social engineering started a long time ago, particularly when Robert Muldoon was out of power. So he was basically the death knell for the male chauvinist paradigm that New Zealand had gone through prior to that, right? So after that point, you get people like Jenny Shipley, you get people like probably one of the first real politically correct leaders was David Lange, and then you have other people like I'm getting UK leaders mixed up here now. John Major. No, that's Britain. Damn it! There was a character like him. Anyway, I think Bill English was in for a while as well. You had Jenny Shipley. You had a few of them, right? They all ushered in this political correct bullshit that was getting brought in Britain at the same time as well, by the likes of everyone who came after Margaret Thatcher. Although Margaret Thatcher, she was the first in a line of people bringing in neoconservatism. So you have neoliberalism and neoconservatism that feed each other. Same thing in New Zealand. You have neoconservatism from the National Party, you have neoliberalism from the Labour Party, right? And this is a global concerted global effort between a lot of these, for want of a better expression, I'm just going to say the global cabal that links them all together. Israel, Britain, England, America, all these countries together, to create a world that has a long view of things, a long controlled view of exactly where they're going, exactly how they're manipulating the world, exactly how they're testing things on their society. Now, for example, I mentioned in a post today that Sweden and New Zealand have a lot in common in this respect. Very, very controlled countries. When I was a kid in New Zealand, just like you could in Sweden as well, apparently you could use your FPOS card. Your bank card any bank card from any bank in New Zealand could be used in any shop. You could go in the smallest store, and back in 1987, use your bank card. I remember me and my friend Laurie Parsons, when we were kids in New Zealand, when both of our families moved from Scotland to New Zealand, and we were neighbours in Scotland, we became neighbours in New Zealand, and we would have this a card for the Olympic pools. We'd have it around our neck. It was like a beige coloured card. We'd also have a bank card because that would have our pocket money and whatever in it. We could go to any store, we could check our balance in the store. 1987. In South Africa, in 1989, 1991, that era, I could go to a bank machine and my dad could in the bank machine pay my pocket money from his card to mine. These countries were way ahead in banking. Why weren't they way ahead in Britain? Was it because the systems were so hard to change? No, it wasn't. It's because they're testing out different things in different populations at different times. Because these are things that help them out. How do we control money flow? How do we watch what's going on? How do we make a cashless society so that people can't even go down and buy drugs off of a dealer? And the way you do that is make everything cashless, right? So let's try out the system here and let's see if we can make something where every corner store would have the ability to pay by a plastic scenario, which means we can spy on everything. Yes, that's why these countries were so early. Don't fool yourself into thinking it was anything different. Don't think New Zealand was just special. the money got spent in those countries by outside interests. That's why you had technology that was beyond what your country should have been, able to get at the time. And why countries that designed the stuff, America, for example, Microsoft systems and IBM systems, it's why they didn't get it to far later on, even though it's from their country, because you were the test bed. And the social engineering of political correctness and the feminist movement and the Me Too movement, these were all tested out in New Zealand as well. And the turning men into simps, guys that literally were emotionally tortured because, they were just geeks. Not all the guys, of course. You get your chads like every other country. What I'm saying is the amount of guys there that weren't even at geek level in other countries. They were still at pretty cool levels. They're still a pretty good looking guy, and yet they're chasing after some fucking horrendously ugly pig. In most countries, they would have been going after a 6, maybe a 7, and then in New Zealand they're going after an international 2 or a 1 even. I'm serious. It was really that bad, and happy to chase after this land whale. I mean, it really was. It's like something out of some kind of Orwellian novel. It was nuts. These are all tied in, by the way. I'm going somewhere with this. So if you look at the situation with the stickers for this army/medical situation, I can't help thinking the fact that Jacinda Ardern is now giving everyone $7,000. The New Zealand dollar has lost shitloads of its value. I already explained in my. If you're someone who watches Bitcoin Roadshow and this, you've already seen what I'm talking about on the fiscal side of things and the economic side of things. That countries are printing money. It's the last stand of a dying currency, but it's not just to keep things alive. It's to give the elites a stepping stone, lily pads. They can jump out of shares, leave everyone behind, because you know why? Do you think the average mum and dad investor who invested in Facebook dumped their Facebook shares at the very same time that Jamie Dimon and all these fucking arseholes did? No. Most of them would have. My friend in Colorado, he had about 400k worth of Facebook shares, which I told him to dump a while ago and he didn't do it. I know he didn't. Tim, if you're watching, I'm pretty sure you don't watch my channel, but if you are there, sorry for talking about you. But I know they'll just absolutely plummet now. All these shares will, because they were pumped up falsely by printing money in the first place. So was the property market worldwide. Why was that pumped up? Ask yourself. It was pumped up so the Chinese government, this is why I think they're all in cahoots, followed by the American and British governments, could print money so that their selected few who were next to the printing press could go out to the world and buy up properties and speculate and multiply their wealth. But at the same time, so that you would have to put 10 of your life savings, instead of having a house within 5 years, easy to get, maybe paying off an easy to pay mortgage in a few years. Even with interest rates at 1%, you're stuck in a situation you're paying it over 20, 30 years and probably never owning it, because eventually you'll get an interest rate that you can't handle and then you'll lose the property. It was meant to take your money off you. It was meant to take your property off you and put it in the hands of the rich elite. New Zealand and Vancouver and Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne are all prime examples of this. San Francisco, all prime examples of this. The property was inflated to not only destroy the lives of people and to enslave people into debt enslavement, but it was also to, again, further shake the money tree and take the capital off the people. And again, New Zealand is a prime example of this. The minimum wage went up. Everyone feels, Jacinda's pretty good. The minimum wage is up like, what is it, $16 I think it is in New Zealand now? It doesn't make a difference. I don't see Kiwis going overseas more than other people. I don't see them going and buying the average. I'm not talking about the rich Kiwis. I'm talking about your average New Zealander. I'm not seeing them with 3 properties and 4 properties owning something overseas. I'm not seeing that. What it really is for is to make you think that you have it better. Same as Americans are brainwashed into thinking they have it better than other countries. They don't. Most of them are slaving away 2 jobs. Many are slaving away 3 jobs. Most don't have decent healthcare, if healthcare at all. They're not having good lives, but they're told that, I'm just happy to live here because, I live in the land of the free, and not a lot of countries get to live this free as we do out here, so we're blessed, Thank you, Jesus. They're fucking delusional. And they don't realize how free other countries are. And that people aren't struggling just to put food on the table or pay their rent or pay their mortgage. People aren't really struggling that much. A lot of people in Bulgaria got two places. They got a place that their parents gave them. They got given by the government when communism fell. And they've got another place in the countryside. People haven't got it that bad as what you think. I've got friends in Africa who are quite wealthy, who don't want to go anywhere else because they know their money won't get very far. But they've got, my one mate Clinton, he's got a boss-ass boat. He's got a Cobra, one of those AC Cobras and stuff. He's doing really well. They've got a good life. Why? Because it's all relative. He could probably move to America and live, or he could probably move to England and have 1/4 the kind of lifestyle that he has in South Africa. Why? There's no point. Anyway, all I'm saying is social engineering was very strong within New Zealand and is strong within the Five Eyes countries and the other ones like Sweden. And the Scandinavian countries are like that as well. That's why they let in a lot of refugees. That was to create a rift. The elite create chaos. That's what they do. And the end game is ultimate chaos. Well, we did show them. We did show the sheeple. We showed them in the movies. We showed them all these movies. They could have looked. They could have learned. It's not like we lied to them, God. If that is the rules and that's how it works, and the God just says, you demons are allowed to do what you want, but the one rules are that you need to show your hand, okay? Okay, God, thanks very much. That's what we'll do. Here you go. Here's a movie that shows here's a documentary that shows how the banking system works, that we know that only 1% of the population will watch, and even that 1% that watch it, most will want to go back to their blue-pilled life and not believe what they saw. How many times have you seen supernatural things in your life, any of you out there? Whether it be some kind of UFO, not alien, just UFO, probably military technology, probably from your pocket, your taxes, or something that was spiritual and really, really shook you. I can guarantee you within 1 year, that thing that you couldn't stop thinking about, you weren't thinking about 1 year later. Because we're socially conditioned to forget about things that are amazing. Because amazing things are often realizations of, oh my God. You get a certain feeling, fuck, life is free. I'm actually at another level now. And you can actually fall back to the level that you were. That level can take you down to depression. This is what depression is. Depression is a level of understanding or misunderstanding that you're at about your own life, where you really feel that everything's hopeless because you've been mentally indoctrinated to think that way. I'm going to leave it there and say just a few more words about the New Zealand situation. If things kick off around the world with what I think is happening, to the extent of what I think is happening, which could be a maximum case of, it could be a maximum case of, is it 75 million? Around about 70 to 200 million, it's the number I said before. Somewhere between 75 to 200 million is in the upper end of what it could be if there is multiple strains of this virus and they all go around the world and they can infect you multiple times. So in other words, if you're weakened, if you survive the strongest strain, but you're in the country that had the strongest strain first, like Iran, you might still get killed by the weakest strain because you can't handle it because you've got the scar tissue in your lungs, right? So we could end up with a 15 to 20% mortality rate worldwide. But that's from people affected. So you still have people who don't get affected by it because they end up quarantining themselves or basically putting themselves in a situation of isolation, which is what the system probably wants, if I'm right about this. And what would end up happening is we'd all be separated from each other. They'd probably end up shutting down the internet or finding out how they can restrict certain traffic. So for example, we can see this as an encrypted traffic stream between these IP addresses, but we know that it has the hallmark signature of, I don't know, Bitcoin traffic or whatever it might, no, it wouldn't be Bitcoin. Let's say traffic from this particular VPN service like NordVPN, right? Let's cancel that. Let's keep the government one going. The government has a certain signature that we can see, even though it's encrypted. It has a certain trend look, if you know what I mean, by that data pipe, by that VPN pipe that there is. and we can keep that piece of traffic going. Expect things to get locked down. If they do get locked down, you know that they're going next level. The video that I posted in my last one, I'm going to also post on here, shows you these guys were talking years ago that beware if you start to see something happening in Iran. We've seen this for a long time. They've been queuing this up. Now, we had the virus in Iran. We've got America ramping up the war efforts sneakily while no one can protest. You know, this is not by accident. This is all on purpose. If multiple strains, we know it's on purpose. If we're all locked down, we can't protest, that's on purpose. If New Zealand's got these stickers coming in to these military bases to stick around vehicles and on people's homes, that's not, you know, that's just probably forward planning, but it's probably on purpose given the fact that it is the most petri dish of a social engineered country in the world. And the fact that if that's all true, then you know that the mosque killings were all not fake, but a planned false flag event to allow them to take away people's weapons, semi-automatics like AR-15s and fully automatics that some people had. My friend had a AK-47 and what was that other one, an SR or something, but fully automatic weapons, you know, so you can get them in New Zealand. You could get them before, you can't get them now. Everyone's had to give them back. Again, all on purpose, I believe. Same as the Australia situation, where you pretty much can't get a gun there now. It means you cannot get together with your neighbours and form a militia to protect yourselves from whatever it is coming through. Luckily, I live in this part of the world, former Yugoslavia. You know, I know that all around this country, people have got, same as in Bulgaria, people in their roofs of their houses and all sorts of places. I know that they will have these things from left over from the war. I don't even have to think about it. I don't even have to ask my neighbours. I'm pretty sure when the time comes I can ask them, and I could be guaranteed that 1 in 10 will have God knows what stuff left over from the war. All right. So it's safer being in countries like this that grow your own food, where good people most likely have weapons, and they can, you know, stick together, and everyone can kind of, as I say, form a proper community, keep yourself safe, or as much as you can do. We don't know what weapons our governments have created with our money and with our collective intelligence throughout the years, so we don't know what's on the horizon. But I can almost bet, I can bet you it will look like alien tech, and that's why I really do believe there will be potentially, if the scare tactics they're trying to scare us with don't work to the effect that they want, stand by for a fake alien invasion. With the technology they've managed to either harvest from potential real aliens and these things like Roswell, or they've been able to create through generations and generations of stealing our money and brain power to develop these things. And we'll leave it at that. Have a good one if you live in New Zealand. Stay safe. Think about these sort of things I've said, and make preparations. Even partially prepare to think, how would I make my exit if I had to get out of here? You know people with boats. You know people. There's a lot of people in the city of sails in Auckland. Got enough people in. How much would you have to stick on a sailboat to get out of there to somewhere else? Where would you want to go? I think Chatham Islands might be a good place, to be honest with you. If you're around about Christchurch area, just go straight east. I don't know. There's definitely places you can go to just kind of hole up. What would you take with you? Would you take just canned food? It wouldn't be very wise. Would you take seeds from stuff that you think you can plant later? Just remember that these companies like Monsanto don't think that wasn't on purpose. When they created their corn, they have Terminator seed. You can't just take that corn, dry it out and plant it. It will not work. That was all done on purpose too. So make sure you take seeds with you, because wherever you land, the locals might not be so friendly. Maybe you find a bit of land, maybe you can defend it with a weapon or a few weapons, but you'll need to plant something, The seafood has been depleted all around this world. Again, don't think it's by accident that in America and in Britain they tried to push this fracking so much. They wanted to poison the earth. They wanted to make it so that you couldn't grow anything, that everyone was sucking on the tit of the factory and the government. Please, government, Can I have my daily piece of milk? You know, you'd be completely under control. That was their end game. I don't know if they'll get that, but people are dumb enough to let it happen. This is why they were destroying the water supply. They're either drying it up like they're doing in Australia, so there is none, or what they're doing is they're poisoning it, like England tried to do to Scotland. Scotland's got tons of oil, tons of gas, but no, let's frack for gas instead, so that we can basically scorched earth policy, right? We know that in history they've done this. Scorched earth is a thing. We know that in history the English government have looked all over the world for viruses to use as bioweapons. So history does repeat. Don't be foolish enough to think that if someone was a scumbag, absolute skullduggery 100 or 200 years ago, that they wouldn't be just as much scumbags nowadays. They are. So all I'm saying is, go out to the shops. If rhubarb is your favourite thing, or me, the seeds I put aside that I wanted to have with me here, but I have in this country actually, were raspberries, rhubarb. What else are things that I liked? Feijoa. Oh damn! If you haven't got them in your country, try and get feijoa seeds. And be prepared to plant these things. You don't know how long it's going to go. The best thing you can do is hide. This is why it's a pity that we're not at the stage yet of being able to go up in space shuttles and find our own places, because I think the only way to unenslave yourself, assuming that we're not in some kind of realm and there actually is outer space, would be to find another planet, because the only way to be free from these fuckers, if they know you exist, the system, they will come hunting for you to find you, because they can't let you be free. Just knowing that you exist would just kill them, knowing that someone was having a good, happy life. They would come and they would search the galaxy for you, the outland revenue, you know what I mean? They'd be out to get you. So, we obviously can't do that yet. We don't know if Elon Musk is on the good side, but for the simple fact that he's a billionaire, there's basically an 80% chance that he's on the dark side. I may as well just call it the dark side. Fuck it, And Jeff Bezos has a 99% chance that him and Warren Buffett are on the dark side, right? Why? Because Warren Buffett manipulates markets, so does Jeff Bezos. He manipulates situations to get people to buy things they don't even need. That is evil. It's inherently evil. You don't need all that power, that data wealth that you've mined from everyone's lives. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. This was about New Zealand. The focus was on New Zealand. The focus was on the military base down south, which is for America. America's got an extreme high presence in New Zealand. The GCSB does work with NASA and the NSA. That's a fact that has been proven over 10 years ago now. And yeah, the country is a social petri dish. You should beware, because the worst case scenario, the elite aren't going to want you in their little Garden of Eden. Okay.